I found my wife's old diary and learned the truth about what she had been hiding for 20 years. There were so many times during all this when I thought that I was overreacting, and it makes me sick to my stomach to realize that I had been completely right. I'm a 50-year-old man and I've been with my wife for almost 20 years now. We are high school sweethearts, and I have never wanted another woman in my life. My wife is stunningly beautiful, and she was an amazing mother to our children. She is incredibly charismatic and lights up any room that she walks into. She's also the type of person who makes friends wherever she goes, and she is aged like fine wine. Even though learning the truth about her has ripped my heart in two, I don't know if I have the courage to leave her after all these years. When we were younger, we both had a strong interest in traveling, so we made it a priority to travel to as many countries as we could afford. We ended up visiting almost 30 countries together and racking up years of wild, unique memories. After we had explored the world together, we decided to settle down and have kids, and ever since then, our life has been pretty quiet, or so I thought. The other day I was rummaging around in the garage looking for an old tool I had misplaced when I accidentally knocked over a random, overstuffed box. When I was putting the box back together, I found a small pink diary with a broken lock on it. All of our children are grown, and our only daughter is turning 20 years old. I thought the diary might have belonged to her when she was a child, so I started reading it with the intention to only read a couple of pages to relive old memories. I know that my choice to read the diary might be a little controversial, but I thought it was from when she was around 8 years old. I just wanted to see if there were any wholesome childhood memories that I had forgotten about. I miss my daughter, and all my grown kids so much these days, and sometimes I feel desperate for any reminders of their childhood since it was such a special time in our family. Well, did I get way more than I bargained for? It only took a couple of pages for me to realize that the diary had in fact belonged to my wife. This is when I probably screwed up. Maybe I should have put the diary away as soon as I realized it was my wife's, but I guess curiosity just got the best of me. I kept reading more and more pages of the diary, and I realized she had been keeping it during the time when we were still traveling the world. Meaning, that my wife was about 23, and I was 24 at the time. I hadn't run into any surprises until she started writing about us arriving in Italy. I thought back to the trip. I remember it being one of our worst from my perspective, because I got food poisoning from a crappy cheap restaurant a couple days in. I ended up being bedridden with nausea for 2 days straight during our vacation, and I was feeling so frustrated that I couldn't go out and explore with my wife. But of course, I didn't want to ruin her vacation as well, and I encouraged her to go out and have a good time without me, just to remember to be safe and keep her phone on her. Based on what she told me, she had met some other tourists and went bar hopping with them one of the nights. It sounded like a good time, but I was literally in the middle of throwing up as she was telling me about the night, so I wasn't fully paying attention. I guess I should have, because in the next couple of pages of the diary, my wife started going into the details about how she had ended up sleeping with some rich Italian local that they had met at one of the bars. My heart sank as soon as I read the lines, and I started to hope that this was some sort of fictional, creative writing exercise instead of my wife's true life events. She talked about the intimacy in detail, as well as the guilt she felt afterwards. In the diary, she explained that she had decided not to tell me since I was in such a weak state and she didn't want to ruin my vacation any further. To my wife's credit, she goes on for pages and pages about how guilty she felt about her mistake, and how much she regretted it. But honestly, the damage had been done for me, and I spent the rest of the day just lying down and staring at the wall, thinking about how I had been lied to for literally 20 years. I knew that my wife and I had to have an uncomfortable conversation, and there was no way I couldn't confront her about all this. But again, she's the woman I love, the mother of my children, and leaving her over this would be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I just don't know if I have the strength. Update. I was overwhelmed the day that I found the diary, so I just decided to spend the night at a buddy's house so I could have a chance to process my feelings. It wasn't unusual for me to crash at my buddy's house after a poker night, so my wife thought nothing of it. Good, I really didn't want her to know that anything was wrong since I ultimately had no idea what the hell to do. I considered talking to my friend about it, but I really didn't want to involve anyone else in my marital issues. The very next day, I called out of work, and I went back to my house to wait for my wife to get home from work. It was so strange watching her walk in the door. She thought that it was a normal day like any other. She had absolutely no idea what information I had and how painful the conversation we were about to have would be. I asked her to speak with me in our room, and she started to look concerned. Our marriage has been flawless up until now, and we never really far or heavily disagreed on anything. So it was strange that I was acting so serious and wanting to talk to her in private. I came right out and asked her if she had ever hidden anything from me within our marriage. I told her that I loved her so much and that I trusted her to tell me the truth. As soon as I started speaking, her face fell, and I could tell she knew exactly what I was talking about. My wife didn't even try to hide it or deny it. She broke down crying and started to tell me about the Italian man all those years ago. I think it would have been even harder to hear if I hadn't read all about it myself just the day before. Yes, it's still incredibly hurtful to hear her admit it to my face and to know that she was only telling me the truth because she had got caught. She asked me how I found out, but I just ignored the question and let her continue apologizing to me. I asked her if that was the only time she had ever cheated on me, and she swore on our children that she had never cheated with anybody else. She just kept apologizing and crying, and it was so hard not to comfort her since I had always been there for my wife before this when she was upset. Either way, I told her that I was having a lot of trouble forgiving her and that I needed some time to think about what we should do. She begged me to stay and said that she couldn't live without me. The conversation didn't really get anywhere, and eventually, we finished talking and just started to get ready to go to bed. I couldn't sleep, and even though my wife was upset, she fell asleep immediately, I guess because she had been crying so hard all night. I laid there in bed next to my cheating wife, just staring at the ceiling, wondering what I should do. The next thing I knew, I was heading back to the garage and flipping the pages to continue reading the diary where I had left off. I had put the diary down while my wife was still talking about how guilty she felt for cheating on me. But right there in the middle of the night, I decided to read the diary in its entirety. Thank God I did, because it turned out that my wife had absolutely no intention of telling me the truth about her actions. I thought my heart had broke when I first read about the cheating, but the rest of the diary completely obliterated any scraps left of it. In the last 10 pages of the diary, my wife admits that the Italian man she had cheated on me with contacted her after we had flown back to the States when our vacation ended. I was already upset to learn that she had exchanged contact information with him, and I thought it really conflicted with all the guilt she had been going on about for pages before that. Well, it turns out that she had met up with this guy and effed him one more time while he was visiting the US. I thought back to the dates, and I realized I had been on a business trip that weekend, and so it had probably been easy for her to coordinate meeting him at his hotel. I can't believe the 20 years of marriage has been completely undone by the truth hidden in this unsuspecting little diary. Part of me wishes I had never read this godforsaken thing. I almost wish that she could have taken the secret to the grave, and I never anticipated our life being disrupted by an ugly truth like this. I'm writing this from the garage. It's 5 a.m., and I know my wife will wake up soon, and I will have to make a choice. But honestly, I have no clear idea what to do, and even though I've been betrayed, more than anything, I just want to pretend like all of this never happened.